When the sun sets and the office is empty, who really controls the skyscrapers we work in? We think of CEOs and executives, but after hours, the power shifts. The building becomes a silent shell, and those with true access emerge: security guards, maintenance staff, janitors. They move through empty halls, invisible yet everywhere. Who can be anywhere, anytime, without suspicion? Not the late-working executive, but the janitor. He belongs there. This invisibility is a vulnerability. The people we ignore can become the most dangerous. This is the story of how a man, hidden in plain sight, turned the mechanisms of an office building into instruments of death. These weren't freak accidents, they were calculated acts, targeting ambitious women working late. They trusted the building, the elevator, the system meant to keep them safe. But the system had a flaw. It could be manipulated by someone who understood it intimately. We'll reveal how a pattern of death emerged from maintenance logs and security footage. At the center, the midnight janitor, a man with no official power but ultimate control. This is a cautionary tale about unseen dangers and the power of those we overlook. It forces us to ask, do we really know who we share our workspace with after dark? Sometimes, the most ordinary figure holds the deadliest secrets. And sometimes, the greatest threat is the one we never see coming. It started as a string of tragic accidents. The first victim, Sarah Jenkins, was working late. She called her husband at 11:30 p.m. She never made it home. The elevator dropped between floors. The report called it a freak mechanical failure. 2 months later, another woman, Maria Flores, died in a similar incident, just blocks away. Both were alone, both working late, both killed by a sudden elevator malfunction. 2 accidents became 4, then 6. All women, all late at night, all alone. The media called them the late-night elevator tragedies. The public blamed faulty equipment. Elevator companies were scrutinized, lawsuits filed, but no one looked at the human element. Women began to fear the simple act of riding the elevator home. Official investigations focused on mechanical error, but the pattern was too precise to ignore. 6 women, 6 buildings, all within a few blocks, all dead from accidents that happened only after hours. The real pattern wasn't in the machines, it was in the circumstances. The time, the solitude, the silence of the empty buildings. No one asked who else was there, moving unseen through the shadows. The city was gripped by fear, but the true cause remained hidden. The killer wasn't a malfunction. It was a person exploiting the system's blind spots. The deaths weren't random, they were orchestrated, and the clues were hiding in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered. The question was never about the elevators. It was about who controlled them after dark, and why. After hours, a corporate high-rise transforms. By day, it's a fortress. Security, key cards, familiar faces. By night, only a handful remain, a few late workers and the after-hours staff. The janitor and night watchman have access no executive enjoys. They're expected everywhere at any time with a master key card that opens every door. They know the building's rhythms, its blind spots, which cameras are real, which aren't. Their presence is never questioned. They're invisible by design. We see the uniform, not the person. The janitor becomes part of the scenery. This anonymity is power. It lets them observe without being observed. They know who stays late, who leaves last, who's alone. For someone with malicious intent, this information is gold. In the elevator deaths, invisibility was the killer's greatest weapon. He didn't need to break in. He already had the keys. He didn't need to hide. He was expected. The system was built to keep outsiders out, not to watch those already inside. The killer was the ultimate insider, hiding in plain sight, and no one saw him coming. His name was Arthur Finch, but to most he was just the night guy. Late 50s, quiet, unremarkable. He worked for a cleaning contractor, not the companies themselves. This made him even more invisible, a ghost in the corporate machine. He floated between buildings, working wherever needed. Over 2 years, he'd cleaned every tower where the deaths occurred. On paper, he was reliable, never sick, never late. He kept to himself, rarely speaking, always moving on. Security footage showed him near elevator banks on the nights of the incidents, but no one questioned it. He was the janitor. He belonged there. The chilling detail, his access badge. It opened not just offices, but elevator mechanical rooms, normally off-limits. He wasn't a supervisor, but he carried a supervisor's badge. No one noticed until it was too late. Arthur Finch had the keys to the kingdom, and no one was watching. The breakthrough didn't come from a witness, but from data. A task force of detectives and forensic engineers dug into the elevator logs. Every elevator records every command, every override. In the most recent incident, they found a manual override entered from the basement, minutes before the fatal malfunction. This wasn't a glitch, it was sabotage. The same pattern appeared in all 6 buildings, a reset, a safety override, always just before the victim's death. The killer left a digital signature every time. Cross-referencing access logs, they found one badge used in the mechanical room at the critical moment every time. The badge belonged to Arthur Finch. He was on the roster for every building. Every night, a woman died. The ghost in the machine finally had a name. The evidence was undeniable. The system's memory had recorded his crimes. Arthur Finch's weapon wasn't a gun or a knife, it was the building itself. He understood elevators as computer systems, vulnerable to anyone with access and knowledge. He studied the command codes, learned the timing, and perfected his method. He'd identify a target, a woman working late, alone. He'd watch her routine, then slip into the mechanical room as she headed for the elevator. At the control terminal, he'd disable safety brakes, override the governor, and trigger a sudden, violent stop. The elevator didn't need to fall far, just enough to cause fatal injuries. To investigators, it looked like a mechanical failure. Finch would reset the system, wipe the logs, and return to his cleaning route. No one suspected the janitor. He turned a trusted machine into a silent killer. His murders were invisible, his presence unremarkable. The perfect crime, hidden in routine. The building itself became his accomplice, and no one realized until it was too late. Why did Finch target these women? They weren't connected by company or industry, but by ambition and solitude. They were successful, working late, alone in the offices he cleaned. To Finch, they represented a world that excluded him, a world he resented. Women working late were easier targets alone, less likely to be missed right away. He could observe their routines, confident they'd be alone in the elevator. Investigators found Finch had been the subject of minor complaints. Women felt uneasy around him. These were dismissed as misunderstandings. For Finch, the complaints were humiliations, fueling his anger. Not all his victims had complained, but the pattern was set. Professional women, alone, vulnerable. His crimes were acts of revenge against those he felt judged him. The system ignored the warning signs, and Finch turned that neglect into opportunity. Once Finch was identified, he vanished. He worked his last shift, collected his pay, emptied his account, and disappeared. The manhunt went cold. He had no family, few friends, and a transient work history. He was an expert at being invisible, and he used that skill to escape justice. Despite a nationwide search, Arthur Finch was never found. The corporations involved scrambled to deflect blame. Lawsuits were settled quietly, and the story faded from headlines. The women who died became footnotes in legal battles. The system failed at every level, ignoring complaints, granting excessive access, missing the sabotage. Only after tragedy did buildings tighten security. For the victims' families, it was too late. There were no public memorials, no official recognition, only private grief and a lingering sense of injustice. The ghost in the system had vanished, but the consequences remained, and the lessons were paid for in silence. This story is a warning about the trust we place in our everyday systems. We rely on elevators, security, and the people who work unseen around us. But trust can be misplaced, and systems can be exploited from within. The official safeguards, cameras, keycards, guards, aren't always enough. Sometimes the only warning is intuition. The women who complained about Finch sensed something was wrong, but were dismissed. Their instincts were right. We must learn to trust our gut, to act on feelings of unease. If a situation feels wrong, don't ignore it. Leave, report it, tell someone. Intuition is a personal security system no one can override. The legacy of the Midnight Janitor is a reminder: be aware, question the illusion of safety, and trust yourself. In the empty hours of the night, your instincts may be your only protection. Don't silence them. Sometimes survival depends on listening to the voice that says, "It's time to go." And sometimes that's the only thing that stands between you and the darkness.